Hello again, YouTubers, and welcome to Cup of Joe. As always, I'm your host, Jason McNeil. Now, today on the show, we're going to discuss cap and trade. And the reason I want to discuss cap and trade, quite frankly, is because I was in a seminar recently, and the person at the front, they were talking about political issues and, global issues going forward. And carbon pricing came up, and they said, everyone who knows what cap and trade is, put up your hand. And I was shocked how many people did not put up their hand, right? Because I'm like, we've been talking about it. Trudeau has been talking about carbon pricing. In Ontario, we just implemented cap and trade. So I was kind of surprised people didn't really know what it was or didn't feel confident that they knew what it was. So today, we're going to discuss a little bit about what cap and trade is and how it might affect you. Okay? So first and foremost, cap and trade is carbon pricing, right? So emissions of carbon, production of carbon, you're trying to put a price or find a way to put a price on that. Now, as you know, everything produces carbon, right? You breathe out, it's carbon. So everything we do, everything we make, all the smoke that goes into the air, all the cars we drive, everything is producing carbon. And this is what the government wants to get some revenue generated out of. Presumably so that carbon levels will go down and it's better for the environment. Side note, we make money off the carbon pricing and government gets revenue and then they can invest that revenue into whatever it is they want. Either environmental services or environmental initiatives, businesses, or they can give it back to consumers, right? I believe in BC they have a carbon tax. They give back to consumers at the end of the year a certain amount of revenue they've generated. So there's many things they can do with it. Okay, so what is cap and trade specifically? Well, as opposed to a carbon tax, which is just putting a price on carbon and every product that you get would have a certain amount of tax added to it because it has carbon or it used carbon to make this. So everything would be visible or sort of directly charged to the consumer. So it hits you and you see it and it's direct. Cap and trade deals more with large producers of emissions or large emissions polluters. So what it does is it sets an amount of emissions, a set number for a region, right? So we're in Ontario, we have cap and trade. So Ontario has a certain amount of carbon that it's allowed itself to produce. To say we're going to put out this much emissions. Then you take that number and you divide it up into credits and you sell off those credits to businesses, right? You dictate which businesses have to be involved. Other businesses can voluntarily be involved. But at the end of the day, here's the amount of credits we have to sell and here's what the credits are going to go for. So the government generates revenue selling these credits to companies, which presumably are now going to be more conscious or cautious of how much they're polluting. Okay, so going forward, you're hitting the company and it's trickling down to the consumer. And this is why they choose cap and trade over a carbon tax, because you don't see it directly, right? Your fuel costs will go up, and they were open about, I think, $13 or $17 a month or a year or whatever. But every product you buy is going to go up because the companies that are producing the products and shipping the products and moving the products around all have to pay more money to the government. So the government, you'll hear about the auction, they auctioned off this much and they made this much revenue and that's going to be touted as a great thing. All that money is going to come out of your pocket eventually, right? That's the thing to remember. Is the company is not just going to eat it, they're going to buy their credits and they're going to come to you and expect more money for their products. Okay, so now this presumably costs the big polluters because they buy more credits, so they have to buy more credits, and it benefits the green companies. Okay? Now that's compounded when we get to the trade portion. Now the trade portion is essentially, as I said, the goal is for a region. So for Ontario to produce a certain amount of emissions or less. So if my company goes over, I'm a big polluter, I've done a lot of business this year maybe, I can then trade with other companies that have bought credits that aren't going to use them. So this is compounded benefit to that green company or the company that's not polluting, because not only do they cost less to operate here, but now a big polluter may pay them money to sell credits and they can take that money and that's profit as well and they can sort of move their business forward. So conceivably, it has a carrot and a stick, right? The carrot if you're not an emissions producer, and the stick if you are. Now the problem is that you're going to have everything becoming more expensive, and as I said, that's going to punish the poor people. The other thing that people will point to is that if the goal is to generate revenue, and the revenue goes into green initiatives, but the goal is also to get people to cut emissions, success could mean failure, right? Because if companies do take it on, and they do produce less, and the emissions do drop, then the revenue projections are no longer correct. And that means you have to maybe raise the price for the carbon credits. And as companies see that you're going to raise the price for the carbon credits down the road, maybe they produce more now right? Or, maybe they just continue the way they are, but at the end of the day, it may not have the effect of really lowering carbon because it doesn't lower the demand for carbon, right? It's not a carbon tax on us that we're seeing and evaluating. It's sort of hidden in the cost of products, right? So our demand for the carbon is just as much, but the company has the sort of restriction on how much it can produce. And as it produces less, the government makes less money, and then the government has to, again, come up with new ideas and new methods to fund, the initiatives that they want to fund. So whether or not it will be effective in actually lowering the amount of total emissions, that remains to be seen. What the exemptions will be, there is ways you can get exemptions, I would imagine, and such. And what the effect will be on the poor people. These are the three major concerns of carbon tax. And that's what cap and trade is. It's a limit on the amount of emissions a region can produce, and that limit is shared among a bunch of producers and manufacturers and companies, and they can sort of trade off as long as everything stays under, presumably, that limit, right? So if I'm a major producer, I can buy from a small producer, but there's still only the same number of total credits that Ontario has available, right? Anyway, so that's essentially what it is. You can compare it to the cap and trade system with the carbon tax system, and I'd love to know, do you think that any of them are any good? Because there are people that are just like, look, the whole thing makes life more expensive and it's not viable. It's not a solution to any of the problems that we have, and it's gonna make life harder. I'll be honest, I can sort of subscribe to that philosophy. I understand where that comes from. There is no way to tax for carbon that doesn't make it harder for regular people to live wherever it is you're taxing the carbon. That's true. Whether or not the larger global goal is worth it, that's up for debate. So I'd love to know how you guys feel. Feel free to subscribe to the page, leave a comment below, or you can always get me on Twitter at Cup of Joe Canada, or hit up the website. It's www.cupofjoecanada.com.